the summer, I found these rag wreaths at a thrift shop. I found a bunch of them. I decided to only buy 2, which was kind of dumb. I should have bought them all. And then later on, friends of mine went out and got some too, and they gave them to me, which was so generous and so wonderful. Now, the wreaths themselves weren't in great shape. There were long pieces and short pieces. I really wanted it for the fabric. And when I started taking off the fabric, I realized they're all like vintage 1970s, 1980s prints. Love them. And can you believe that the 1980s is vintage? I know. That's crazy. Back to my story. So I did make some coasters out of some of them, which you might have saw on my Christmas in July special. I also made some Christmas coasters. So you can make these out of any fabric. So if you don't have wreaths, which you might not, you can use any scraps of fabric to make the project we're going to make. Or at least I think you are, because we're going to do some string piecing, and I haven't made this yet. I don't know how big the quilt will be. My goal is a quilt, but I am going to take all these strings, all these pieces, and a string is like thin pieces or thin strips of fabric, all different widths. That's what these are. All different sizes, all different lengths. So before we dig in, my name is Chris O'Neill from Sew the Distance. I am so glad you're here, and I can't wait to get started. The first thing we have to do is press these. I pressed a couple just to try it out, and I realized if I got them wet with some mister of water, it helped tremendously with pressing these all. I'm also going to lay them out on a tray and get them all organized as best as I can, but if you know me, it's going to be a hot mess by the end of it. These are going to go all over the place. I'm going to have to keep reorganizing. Oh, the other thing, one sec. If I don't have enough for a quilt, I did find some fabric in my vintage stash that has like that same feel of the fall fabrics. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait to see how it turns out. So let's do it. All right, so I have all of my fabric all pressed, and I separated it into colors. So I have oranges, I have beiges, yellows, and browns. So they're also pretty and wonderful. And I did cut some more from my vintage fabric stash just to supplement a little bit, especially when I saw that there wasn't enough, say, of the yellow. I did cut some yellow strips. Now, as far as the width of strips, if you are using scraps or you're cutting your own, I like to cut them between 1 inch and 2 inches about. I don't like to go smaller than 1 inch because you figure 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch on each side. That's only going to give you a 1/2 inch strip, which is pretty small. You can if you want to. It all depends on the look you want. And then I don't like to go real super wide either because I like to have that scrappy feel. But it's really up to you, and you can do whatever you want with this. That's what's so wonderful about it. All right, let's talk about the foundations. Now, there's so many ways to make string quilts. So many different techniques, and there's definitely, you know, if you're interested, look at some other ways to do this because there are so many, and they've been around forever. I have vintage quilts that are 100+ years old that are made this way. Not a new technique at all. I personally like to use a foundation fabric, and this particular fabric was on clearance. It was a misprint. It is cotton, and I just cut it into squares, and you can make them any size square you want. I like to make the foundation square about a 1/2 inch bigger than what I want my square to be. For example, I cut these at 10.5 inches. I want my square to be 10 inches, and my finished square in the quilt to be 9.5 inches. I like to make them a little oversized so I can trim them down, which will make more sense when we do that. All right, let's talk about the strips. If you have to cut them, like I said, the widths, you know, you want to really decide on what width you want and keep them varied. Make sure that you're cutting some that are skinnier, some that are wider, at least for this scrappy technique. Luckily, with this wreath, or these wreaths that I had, the widths were varied anyway, so it all worked out. All right, so your first strip, whatever size that you decide, and I know this is a little confusing because there's a lot of decisions to be made beforehand, so you know how to prepare for this. Your first strip, or your longest strip, I suppose is what you'd want to say, needs to be the distance that is corner to corner on your base piece. And for me, that's 15 inches. I checked to make sure my longer pieces were at least that, and they are, so it works out really well. And like I said, some people use paper, some people use an interfacing, batting. You can use all kinds of different things as your base. I just love the fabric. And it doesn't add that much more bulk. I know it seems like it would, but it really doesn't. This is how we build it. All right, let's go with this as my strip to start. You can see that it overhangs some. I'm gonna lay this with the right side up, just along that diagonal through the center. I like to start in the center and work out. So I'm gonna take another strip of fabric and I'm gonna make sure that it's long enough. For example, this one is not long enough. See how it doesn't go out to these ends? So I'm gonna grab something else, let's see. So I'm just gonna line this up, and where this edge is, I'm just gonna cut that off. So I know that that's gonna be long enough. We're gonna put right sides together, and then we're gonna sew right along that edge right here. Now you don't have to worry about it being 1/4 inch. You don't want it less than 1/4 inch, but it's not so stressful. You don't have to make sure that it's exactly 1/4 inch with this technique. You're just sewing right down that edge. I'm gonna do that, I'll be right back. Okay, this is all sewn right along that edge, and I'm just gonna open this up. Well, you know me, I like to set my seam. And then I'm just gonna open this up, and we're gonna press it with our fingers off to the side. Press it well. And then take another piece, and we're going to place it right side together on this side, just like that. And I'm gonna stitch along that edge, and that's a little uneven, so I'm just gonna press that. There we go. And I'm just going to lay that like this and sew along this edge. All right, set that seam and press. Once you get it to about this point, when you have the 3, you can start to lay it out so you can do 2 at a time, and it just saves you a little bit. So let's go in with a yellow. Let's see if I can find a yellow I like. Oh, I like that. All right, I'm gonna put that one here, and I'm just gonna put a pin in that just so I know it's going on this side. I like that. And then on this side, let's do another orangey type thing. Maybe this one. I like that. This is kind of nice. That's a little short. Oh, what about this? Oh, that's interesting, but it's a little dark. And you can really lose your mind being obsessed with this. So I probably should just go with my first choice, right? And you can see that this is from that wreath and it's a little ragged. That's okay. We're just gonna put right sides down, and I'm gonna sew along that edge as straight as possible. And let me grab a pin. This way, when I go to the machine, I can do both sides, one at a time, of course, but it saves you some time as you go along. You can't really do that when you're in the middle, however, because if you pin it, it could catch underneath one. So I like to get that center done first and then do this. All right, let's sew it. Then I just turn it around. I'll take this pin out. And with this one, it is a little wonky, so you can go in a little bit further than 1/4 inch just to catch those seams. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna press it and press these out. And I'm just gonna keep going. So let's go with, maybe we'll do this brown now. I like that. Just gonna cut that here. Maybe this one. I like that too. All right. Oh, I love how this is turning out. So much fun. Put this right sides together and keep going. All right, same thing. So forgiving. You can even see how this is off a little. Not a big deal. Use some steam and keep going. Now I'm gonna keep going and come meet you back here when I'm just about to the corner, because that can be a little tricky. So I'm just gonna keep adding and I'll meet you back here. All right, so we're to a point now where we need to cover these points, and you want to make sure that you have enough room so when you sew these blocks together, these points don't get lost in the seam allowance. So you want a nice chunk here on the corners especially. So I'm gonna look for a good piece. Oh, and one thing I want to mention is there are some solids in here. This is something that was in the wreath. I wasn't sure about adding it or not. I'm still not positive. I love it, but they're going in. Another thing that was in the wreath were these, and I'm not sure that they have the same feel. I think they're from like the 1980s. I don't know. They don't have that same vintage look, but I might end up using them. We'll see. Let's see. I want a wide piece, and I could cut some. This one might work actually, but I don't like the yellow on yellow. Let's see. Oh, this is kind of nice. I like that. All right, so I just did a chunk. If I can find my scissors. Oh, you know what? I do have some smaller pieces. Let's see what I can use here so I don't even have to cut anything down. That should work. I'm gonna bring it in just a smidge and sew along this edge just so I have a lot of space on this edge, and we also are trimming these down, so we got to keep that in mind. I'm going to use that there. Pin that just so I know and can remember, because you know I forget things when I go from here to the sewing machine. All right, I'm going to use this guy too. All right, be right back. All right, now I could go in and cut this away, which I think I will, just to reduce the bulk even more. Oh, and another tip with this, I just use up whatever leftover bobbins I have. It's a great way to use up some thread too. Just gonna trim that off like that, just to reduce some of that bulk. That one's not bad. Now the next step is to trim these down. Now I do it twice and it's just the way I learned. You can do this just in one fell sweep, put your ruler on here, cut it down to the size you want. But I like to cut off all of these edges first because I feel like then I get a better look, which will make sense. Let me show you how I do that. Oh, before I do that, however, I am gonna give this a nice, good pressing. Make sure everything is good and flat. Just like that. So I'm gonna flip this over and I'm just trimming up these edges. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to even worry about that. I'm just trimming up all these loose pieces that are hanging over. It'll make sense. And you could maybe use these in crumb quilting or something like that. There might be some big enough for this project. So I just set them aside. Now you can see it's wonky, it's not square at all, but it is pretty. All right, the next step is to cut it down to 10 inches or whatever size you choose. I'm gonna just hold this up here. I want a 10-inch square. I'm making sure that the 10-inch mark is within the boundaries of this. And you can see my 10-inch mark is here. So I am a little bit over, which is good because we're gonna trim up these two sides, turn it, and then trim up the other two sides. I'm also making sure that I'm gonna have enough on that corner, which I am gonna bring it down just a little bit and make sure those corners have enough fabric that when we put it into a block, it's not gonna get lost and get too bulky. All right, I'm gonna hold this, cut. Now usually I do this standing, so forgive me for being a little awkward with it. All right, and then I'm gonna take this top corner and I'm gonna put it down here. So I'm just gonna flip it like this. I know that these two edges are straight. So now I can line that right up on my 10-inch mark, and I'm gonna cut these two sides. So I'll have a 10-inch square. That's how you square up any block, by the way. A nice sharp rotary blade would help. I think I need to replace this one. That's okay. Here it is. Oh my goodness, look at how pretty. This is awesome. So I have a couple made here. And I went around and did a stay stitch with a basting stitch. I don't like how that turned out. I'm not going to do that again. In fact, I'm going to pull these basting stitches out. I thought it was a good idea because it would hold everything down, but in reality, it puckered everything up, so they're going to come out. But you can see that you can get some really cool designs from these. So I'm going to keep going and meet you back here when I have a whole bunch done. We'll lay them out and let's hope that I get more than 16. I'd love to have a bigger quilt. Okay, it's a few days later and they are all done. I ended up getting 20 and I have quite a bit left. Not a ton, but quite a bit. And I still have some fabric, some vintage fabric that I can cut into, which I'll talk about in a minute. But let's lay these out. I'm going to show you how cool this comes together. I'm also going to show you a sample that I made that is sewn together, a quadrant. It'll make sense. I keep saying that. It'll make sense in a minute. And I'll show you how I press the seams. I also made a sample of where I quilted it, which I'll show you. Okay, let's do this. I love how this turned out. Isn't this cool? And you can play with this. You can do a whole bunch of different layouts. You can even turn these, keep the center the same, and turn them so they look like they're radiating out. Let's see if I can do that. So you can kind of see how you get this big diamond in the middle. So cool that it started out as this wreath and it turned into this. All right, I do have one put together, one quadrant. Oh, and by the way, that's how I would put this together. I would do 4 at a time and put the quadrants together. I decided on the other layout, so I'm going to move these back and I'll show you what I mean. So this is one I had already put together. You can see it like this. And then if I turn it over, you can see that I used, this got a little scrunched up when it was in storage sitting there, all folded up. But you can see that I opened the seams. I also used a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch. I found that was a little bit better for getting everything in because it is a little thick. And I also made my stitch length just a tad bigger than I normally would. So keep those in mind, those ideas. It turned out so cute though, but it'll go right in here. And this is what I mean by making quadrants. I'll sew these together, these 4 together, these 4 together, these 4, and these 4. And these 4, of course, are already together, and then I'm going to make a few more so I can have a nice size quilt. And I love it. All right, another thing that you can do is, let's just take this one. You can take one of these and cut it into quarters and then turn them. I have a little video clip. You can see that here. Now, if you're planning to do this, you want to make sure that the middle piece is kind of wide. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it does help because those are going to be your points on the ends. And you can see I just did that. I turned it and there it is. So then I took that and I made this. Isn't this cute? I wanted to see how well it quilted, and it quilted beautifully. I used batting. I bound it just like I would. And this is just a cute little mug rug. I'll probably use it just to put my tea on and maybe a little snack. Isn't it cute? And it also is a great idea when you're making anything like this, especially if you've never made it before, to see how it behaves to make something small like this and to just get a feel for it. I hope this inspires you to make something like this using your scraps. It's so much fun. There's so many variations. Definitely look into the different variations of this. You can do all kinds of things. And it's very rewarding to use something like that wreath with all that fabric and make something like this and upcycle it. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you take some time to sew, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.